In March 1974, a Japanese soldier stepped out of the Philippine jungle with a rifle, a sword, and one enormous misunderstanding. He still believed World War II was active. His name was Hiroo Onoda, and for nearly 30 years on Lubang Island, surrender notices, newspapers, family appeals, and search parties had all bounced off one sentence in his head: keep fighting. To understand how a man can miss the end of the largest war in human history, you have to go back to December 1944, when Japan was already losing badly. Onoda was a 22-year-old intelligence officer sent to Lubang, a small Philippine island southwest of Manila, where Japanese commanders expected an American attack. His orders were brutal in their simplicity: disrupt the enemy, destroy useful facilities if possible, gather intelligence, and above all, do not surrender or take your own life. Those orders were supposed to last until Japanese forces returned, which is the sort of military planning that sounds firm until history changes the locks.
In August 1945, Japan surrendered. The emperor announced the war was over, and millions of soldiers began the terrible business of coming home, grieving, rebuilding, or not coming home at all. On Lubang, the news arrived as leaflets dropped from the sky. But Onoda and his small group decided the messages were Allied propaganda meant to trick them into capture. He was not alone at first. 3 other soldiers, Yuichi Akatsu, Shoichi Shimada, and Kinshichi Kozuka, disappeared with him into the mountains. They had been trained to expect deception, trained to obey orders, and trained to see surrender as shame. So every proof of peace became proof of a better enemy trick. The 4 men learned the jungle schedule: rain, heat, insects, hunger, mud, patrols, and the long blank afternoons when a war can keep echoing inside your own skull. For the islanders, this was not a quirky survival story. It was fear that could appear from the trees with old rifles, and a war nobody else was fighting.
Onoda's group stole food, raided farms, burned supplies, clashed with police and villagers, and killed people they wrongly believed were enemy soldiers. That human cost matters, because the strangest part of this story is not that Onoda survived the jungle, but that the war kept hurting people after it was supposedly over. The first crack came when Yuichi Akatsu slipped away from the group in 1949 and surrendered in 1950, bringing Japan proof that the holdouts were still alive. His surrender should have ended the fantasy immediately, but Onoda saw it as betrayal, which is very convenient if your belief system has decided reality is inadmissible evidence. In 1954, Shoichi Shimada was killed in a firefight with Philippine forces, leaving Onoda and Kozuka to continue a 2-man war through the 1950s and 1960s.
The jungle, meanwhile, kept aging them. Uniforms rotted, weapons had to be cleaned obsessively, and survival became a routine made from stolen rice, bananas, coconuts, and suspicion. They built shelters that could be abandoned quickly, moved at night, studied the island from ridgelines, and treated every airplane or search team as part of an elaborate trap. Every few years, Japan tried again with leaflets, newspapers, family messages, and loudspeaker appeals. Basically the world's saddest customer support ticket for ending a war. Onoda read the materials carefully, noticed tiny things that seemed inconsistent, and used those details to convince himself the entire outside world was lying. In October 1972, Kozuka was killed during a clash after he and Onoda set fire to farmers' rice. And suddenly, the last soldier in Onoda's war was Onoda.
Now he was alone. One aging man in a shrinking jungle, guarding orders from a dead empire,
while Japan outside had bullet trains, televisions, and a completely different future. 2 years later, a Japanese student and adventurer named Norio Suzuki came to Lubang looking for, as he famously put it, Lieutenant Onoda, a panda, and the abominable snowman. In February 1974, Suzuki actually found him, which means the most impossible item on that travel list somehow came before the panda. Suzuki did not treat Onoda like a monster or a museum piece. He talked to him, took photographs with him, and tried to explain that Japan had surrendered decades earlier. Onoda listened, but listening was not the same as surrendering, because in his mind, only one person had the authority to cancel his mission. He told Suzuki that he would lay down his arms only if his commanding officer personally ordered him to do it, which is obedience taken to its most haunting extreme. That commanding officer was Major Yoshimi Taniguchi, who was no longer commanding jungle warfare. He was living in Japan and working as a bookseller. In March 1974, Taniguchi flew to Lubang, walked into the jungle, and brought the one document Onoda would finally accept: official orders relieving him of duty. Taniguchi read the order aloud, and after 29 years of refusing leaflets, newspapers, search parties, and common sense, Onoda finally accepted that his war was over. He broke down because the thing that had kept him alive had also trapped him, and when it vanished, almost 3 decades vanished with it. Onoda surrendered with his uniform, rifle, ammunition, grenades, and sword still carefully maintained, like a soldier reporting late from a battlefield the world had already buried. President Ferdinand Marcos pardoned him, and Japan gave him a hero's welcome, but that clean ending was never as clean as the ceremonies wanted it to look. Onoda later moved to Brazil, returned to Japan, opened nature camps for children, and died in Tokyo in 2014 at the age of 91. Hiroo Onoda's story is not just about a soldier who missed a memo. It is about what happens when an order survives longer than the world that gave it meaning, which is oddly human in the bleakest possible way. History changed the locks, and one man kept guarding the old door.